Welcome to the podcast, Restore Yourself, Restore Your Marriage, where it's all about discovering the thoughts that get you in the mood, the thoughts that get you out of the mood, and how creating a deeper connection with yourself creates a deeper connection with your spouse. I'm your coach, Shelly Anderson, coaching you through life, love, and intimacy. This is episode number 186, Vanquishing Valentine's Day Sabotagers. Dun, dun, dun. Oh no. Are there sabotagers when it comes to Valentine's Day? Yes, there is. We may not know what they are, but we sure will feel them when they show up, and we will probably be mad that they have shown up. And what is very interesting as I was thinking about this particular episode is I decided to look up, like, what are the most common problems and struggles and challenges couples face when it comes to Valentine's Day, right? Because this is the day, it's a holiday, it's recognized on our calendars in the school systems, and we usually don't have this holiday off, like we don't get school off or work off, but it's definitely celebrated. And so along with that can come some very interesting thoughts, some biases, some beliefs, some which are great and positive, and also some which can be negative. And so I was very curious to see what some of the challenges are around Valentine's Day. And the answers that I found were actually quite surprising. They are not actually what I thought they were going to be. And one of the questions I typed into the internets was, what is the most researched topic when it comes to Valentine's Day? And here's what the answer was. The answer is, what is love? What is love? Baby, don't hurt me. Isn't that interesting? I found this so fascinating that on the day where we are thinking about love, this is the topic that's coming up the most. Like, what is love? We are trying to get back to our roots about what love is in our own lives. And are we feeling it? Are we expressing it? Are we receiving it? Are we giving it? It seems like at this time in the world, this day and age, this is something that we are curious about and maybe that we are struggling with a little bit. And of course, when it comes to Valentine's Day, if we have any struggles in our relationship or any negative thoughts about how our relationship is going, any negative thoughts about ourselves, our spouse, intimacy, these things are going to be challenged when Valentine's Day shows up. Now, along with this concept of what is love, there are some other kind of challenges that come with the holiday in and of itself. So we have the concept that there are a lot of expectations when it comes to Valentine's Day. Very high expectations. And so with those expectations can come a high degree of stress and pressure, right? To know what the expectations are and to meet them and fulfill them. And we often have dreams or daydreams or just ideas and visions of what Valentine's Day should look like, or what we think it's supposed to look like, or what we want it to look like. And it's interesting because what we find is a lot of times that just takes place in our mind and we never communicate it. And then we are super disappointed and even angry when those things don't turn out the way that we envision them in our mind. It's interesting that even when you look at a couple and it comes to Valentine's Day, you can have couples who are on opposite ends of the spectrum. You may have one spouse who loves Valentine's Day, and you can have one spouse who dreads it and is like, I hate this holiday. And so it's important to just know that that's normal, right? That happens. We don't have to be on the same page when it comes to holidays and celebrations and Valentine's Day. We all have our own thoughts and meanings and interpretations of what these events mean in our lives. So, what do we do, right? What do we do when we are struggling with Valentine's Day and there are things that show up to sabotage the ideal vision we have in our mind? What do we do about all this? So, we're going to talk just a little bit about this. We're going to go back to the basic. We're going to define love because I bet that's something we haven't looked up the definition for recently. And then we're going to talk about some of these Valentine's Day sabotagers and what we can do about it. So in the dictionary, love is defined as both a noun and a verb. Now, this is awesome. This is awesome because this expands how we can incorporate and experience love. Why would we limit love? Why would we limit it? If we really step back and think about it, love is one of those emotions. It's a feeling that we actually enjoy feeling. We love it. We love love. And so for us to be able to really challenge ourselves at the time of Valentine's Day and say, hey, let's get some more love into our lives in multiple ways and unlimit love, this is going to be a beautiful thing. We are going to benefit from it as well as those around us. So the first definition is going to come in noun form. Love is an intense feeling of deep affection arising out of kinship or personal ties, and can also be based on admiration, benevolence, or common interests. So from a life coaching point of view, we talk about feelings a lot. And it's important to understand that love is a feeling, but feelings don't just exist or arise out of nowhere. Feelings are caused by thoughts that we have. And so this invites us to really look at our own experience with feeling love. And if we're struggling with feeling love, the beautiful thing is we can really have this understanding about ourselves that it's coming from the thoughts that we are having. So if we're not feeling very loving, it means that we are not having very loving thoughts. And we can change those thoughts. So that is really good news. I love that it talks about we can feel love from common interests. This really invites us to almost revisit our marriage, our relationship with our spouse, and reflect on what are the common interests that we share, right? Like that's strengthening the things that you do have in common. But it's not the only way to build love, right? Just increasing interest in other areas, new things to discover about yourself and your spouse. That can also really increase love. Love is also defined as a great interest in something or someone. I love this definition because it invites us to not be passive in our relationships. If we ever find ourselves thinking that marriage is boring, we need to challenge our own brain, our own mind, to become more interested in parts of our spouse that we don't know enough about. We definitely, if you're struggling with that and you're like, well, I think I know everything about my spouse. Let me tell you something. You don't know everything about your spouse. You don't know all their thoughts. That is for sure. This is where most relationships really struggle, is we think and we assume we know all these things about our spouse, and we assume we know what they're thinking and how they are operating. We don't. We get this wrong all the time as humans because we are not built to be mind readers. So one way we can always stay interested in our spouse is to be interested in their thoughts. Oh, yeah. And those can be very interesting. Wow. I almost didn't do this podcast today because I had such an amazing, mind-blowing, monumental experience this morning that kind of has to do with this. And I was going to just say, you know what? Scratch this podcast. We're going to focus on this other experience I had because it was so transformational and it opened my mind up even more to this concept that I'm talking about. But I'm actually going to save that for next week. So make sure you listen because this is so fascinating, this concept of interest. And for anyone who's feeling like, hey, yeah, we've been married a while. I love my spouse. I'm not that interested in discovering more, or I'm not that interested in sex and intimacy, or maybe my spouse is, but I'm not so much. There is so much to learn that is fascinating when we can learn the thoughts in our spouse's mind. Whoa. So we're going to talk about that next week. But I want you to understand that this is part and foundational for love, this concept of interest. So I really want everyone to self-reflect. And I would love for you to ask yourself, like, how interested have I been in some aspects of my spouse? What if there's an aspect of them you've never been interested in them? Maybe it's time to pique that interest. Okay. Love is also an attraction based on sexual desire. That's going to be really hard if you are only thinking negative thoughts about your spouse, or you're never piquing your interest in them. It's going to be hard to feel that sexual desire because that's also a feeling that comes after we think something. Love is defined as an unselfish, loyal, and benevolent concern for the good of another person. So a lot of times that's what we think about in married love. And also on a sexual note, this is part of the definition, but again, not the only definition, is the sexual embrace. It is being intimate. It is having that sexual relationship. That is one aspect of love. But again, not the only aspect. Okay, so those were the noun definitions. What about the verb definitions? Obviously, this is going to take some action. It's the doing part of love. But it's going to be hard to do the things of love when we are not feeling the feeling of love. Isn't that interesting how that works? But the action portion of love is to cherish. To cherish, like that's an active thing that we do. To hold dear, to thrive in. That's not a passive thing. For us to thrive in our relationship, our marriage, intimacy, to thrive in love, desire, that's not passive. We have to be a participant. We have to show up. We have to engage ourselves to be a part of it. It also means to like or desire actively. Like this is part of the definition, to be active in it. It also means, and this one is kind of sexy for me, to feel a lover's passion, to feel their devotion or their tenderness. Oh, yeah. Oh, that just makes me want to take a big breath in. I love that, right? It is this deeper connection with your lover to actually feel of their passion and their devotion. And it's to caress and to fondle. Whoa. Yeah. That is, again, it's that sexual aspect of love. So as we're thinking about these different definitions, it invites us to really expand our concept of what love is and not limit it. We can move forward with optimism and excitement and passion and desire by releasing the limits of love, by expanding how we think about love. And maybe if some of these definitions were new to you, to say, hey, that's a little interesting to me. Maybe I'm going to focus on this aspect of love because I've never done that before. And watch what that sparks inside of you. That's exciting. Your brain is going to like that. And when your brain likes it, you are going to have the emotions of excitement that come with it. Like, yeah, this is fun. Jumping into the concept of love is a fun thing. I'm going to learn something about myself. I'm going to learn something about my spouse. This is going to have a positive effect on our relationship. Okay, I'm in. This is great. And I think it's important for us to remember that love has many components, many aspects, many parts, and that maybe if we're struggling with one part of our relationship, one part of loving our spouse, that doesn't mean that we can't access all the other parts that perhaps may be going very well. So it invites us to really expand as a person, to allow more love in, to allow more love to be at the basis of the actions we are taking in our marriage. This is going to be super helpful when it comes to our libido, our desire, and our intimate relationship with our spouse. Now, what are some of the sabotagers? What are some of the sabotagers when it comes to Valentine's Day and showing love and being in that state where we do feel loving? Some of the most obvious sabotagers to us feeling love that might rob us from enjoying Valentine's Day could be that, hey, maybe we are actually struggling right now in the marriage. Maybe there are some issues that have been lingering and they haven't been addressed. They are being swept aside or avoided or ignored, and you're struggling. And you don't want to think about Valentine's Day. You don't want to think about doing something loving because you don't feel loving. That can be a sabotager. Going right along with that, if that is happening, you're also going to probably feel some sense of neglect or loneliness. And so when we are having the feeling of loneliness instead of love, it's going to be hard to really get ourselves in a loving mood when we try to just convince ourselves to get there in order to celebrate the obligatory Valentine's Day. And heaven forbid, if we are feeling negative and then we feel like it's just obligation to have sex on Valentine's Day just because it is that day. And if we try to do that, we are probably not going to enjoy that experience very much. And we're going to have a lot of negative thoughts about ourselves, about our spouse, about Valentine's Day, about sex, if we just go through the motions against having negative thoughts. Did that make sense? If we're having negative thoughts about sex and about our spouse, and then we just have sex because it's Valentine's Day, it just makes everything worse. So we really want to pay attention to our thoughts this week. Another sabotager would be that perhaps we may start thinking about experiences that were negative from the past. Maybe we're not doing it on purpose, but maybe they're just coming up. Maybe we have had past experiences with our spouse on Valentine's Day where they didn't meet our expectations. They didn't buy us the flowers. They weren't romantic. A million things that we might be paying more attention to. Another sabotager could be what we already discussed is expectations. Oh, there are so many expectations that come with Valentine's Day, right? My spouse should do this. They should send me flowers. They should plan a romantic evening. They should prepare ahead of time. They should put forth the effort. They should buy me an expensive gift. All these shoulds. To do something big, to do something romantic, to do something sexual. And this brings with it a high level of stress. And if you've been listening to this podcast for any amount of time, you're probably going to recognize when I say this, high stress lowers our desire for sex. It really does. And we are like putting so much stress on ourselves, on our spouse for Valentine's Day, and then wonder why we don't want to have sex on Valentine's Day. It's very interesting, right? But it does really increase our stress when we have all these expectations. And then we get mad that our spouse doesn't know us well enough, or if they really loved us, they would have known to meet our expectations. They would have known all these things and done them. Another sabotager that we might not really think is sabotaging us is that maybe we are really uncomfortable with emotions. And this can really happen to probably most of us because we're not taught growing up like, hey, it's a healthy thing to express our emotions. Most of us and most of media is like, hey, just keep it together, right? Get a grip already. Sweep it under the rug. Every now and then we find people who grow up in families where they are taught, hey, express your emotions. There's healthy ways to do that. Most of us are not taught that. We don't know how to do it. And so in fear of overreacting or making things worse than they are, a lot of times we just suppress, hide, we do all kinds of things. And these can be sabotagers. So what do? Let's increase love. Let's just get more of it into our lives because love feels amazing. Love feels amazing for both people in a relationship. It feels good for the person who is saying, hey, I want to do something loving. I want to be loving. I want to show love. It feels amazing. You feel amazing in your own body. And then the person receiving it, they feel amazing. This person loves me. So we can increase love. Like, let's just do that today, starting today. Let's put more love into our life on purpose this week, starting today. We don't need to wait for Valentine's Day. We can start on Monday. I'm going to give you 5 tips how to do it. Okay. The first one is show love to yourself. I don't mean like just check out from Valentine's Day. I'm saying pick one thing that you can do that will fill your own bucket so that you are showing love for yourself. I will say on a personal note, my husband and I were probably going through the most stressful time we have ever experienced in our marriage. We have so many things that require a high level of our time and attention and focus on details. And there's nothing we can do to get out of it except be horrible people and horrible parents. And we are choosing to not be those things. But with deciding to be a good parent and good spouses, we have a lot on our plate that is demanding of us right now. So our stress levels are through the roof. And it's important for each of us to really take a moment to do one thing for yourself so that you can fill your own bucket. I'll tell you what I did. I bought this sweater. Do you guys see it? I bought this sweater on sale. I didn't feel guilty that I was spending a lot of money. I think it was $11. I thought it was cute. And I was like, I want to wear this during Valentine's week to bring the love, right? Increase the love on purpose. That was just one thing I did. Did that solve any of my problems? No. Did I feel awesome for doing it? Yes. Do I feel amazing that I have this sweater on right now with hearts? Yes. That was just one little thing I did for myself. So please do one thing for yourself to fill your own bucket before you try to do anything else. Show that love to yourself. The second idea is I want you to think about creating a meaningful moment with those that you love. Maybe it's a child, maybe it is your spouse, maybe it's a friend, maybe it's an extended family member, maybe it's a neighbor. But I want you to create one meaningful moment with them. It doesn't have to be planned with them, right? Unless it requires that. Like maybe you're going to want to go out to lunch with a friend. But I want for you to really just think about that. Like, what's one meaningful thing, one meaningful connection, a moment that doesn't take a lot of work to instigate and spark that feeling of love within you. And then you can share it with somebody else. Just one moment. Okay. Our brain loves the idea of one moment, that it's not like these huge, big, monumental projects. Just one moment. We can do that. Number 3, this is going to be mainly for spouses, right? Communicate clear expectations for Valentine's Day, or let your expectations go. If you're not willing to communicate what those are to your spouse, then you need to let your expectations go. If you're not willing to say to your spouse, hey, I want you to plan a nice dinner, I want flowers, and this is the gift that I want, then you need to let those expectations go, because there's no way your husband can read those thoughts in your mind and then deliver them exactly the way that you envision. So that's not fair, right? And as adults, we want to do things in a way that's mature. We want to do things in a way that are clear, that are honest, that are very adult-like. We don't want to operate like 3-year-olds. It is not effective. It's not healthy for marriage or relationships. It's not healthy for communication or for intimacy. So if we're not willing to be clear through communication about what we want, and if our partner doesn't agree, we need to let that go. We really do. And something that could help with that is, instead of focusing so much on Valentine's Day, is do Valentine's week, right? Man, Nick and I learned really quick that trying to put all the stress on one day when you have young kids, that is really hard, and it doesn't add to the actual celebration of love. It doesn't. It takes away from it. So we kind of got rid of Valentine's Day. We do Valentine's week, and then we allow ourselves to be flexible and see how the week is unfolding and unwinding, and when is actually a good time for us to celebrate and be together and enjoy the celebration of our love. And as a follow-up to that, I got flowers today, which is not Valentine's Day. Nick got me flowers today, ahead of Valentine's Day. I wasn't expecting that. Zero expectation to receive flowers today. And I think he's amazing for buying me flowers at the beginning of the week and not on Valentine's Day. It's awesome. It was a fun surprise. It was a great way to start off the week. So those are some things to consider. Here's the 4th idea. Do something funny. I don't care what it is. It doesn't even have to cost money. Last night, even though I wouldn't even know if you would consider that Valentine's week, but it was during the Super Bowl. Of course, they have some amazing commercials, and I was just like, I can't wait to see the commercials, because I just want to laugh. I want to laugh hard. I want to laugh out loud. And humor is good. It is a good reminder to say, yes, you can have fun with your spouse, even in the midst of stress and struggle and chaos. And we were able to laugh out loud hard at some of the commercials that showed up during the Super Bowl, right? So look for opportunities to incorporate something funny, some humor throughout this week. And finally, the last tip that you might want to incorporate this week is to allow yourself to actually feel all of your feelings. What? It's one of my favorite concepts of life coaching. Feel all your feelings. And if you're curious as to how to do that, be curious about what that experience is like. And ask yourself, like, what feelings am I going to feel this week? And then pay attention and allow all of them to come, and notice them and say, oh, I actually felt a little anger this week. And don't sweep it under the rug. Just notice it. Allow it to vibrate in your body. Because when you allow a little bit of anger to vibrate in your body, then the feeling has done its job, and that anger it'll leave. And then you can invite another emotion to come in, also like love. And then you can experience the vibration of love also in your body. Now, being able to feel your feelings is actually a skill. And most people aren't taught that it's a skill, and it's awesome for marriage. It's awesome for intimacy, and it's awesome for relationships. So if you're interested in improving your marriage and your intimacy, feel all of your feelings. It is a skill. And if you can have better skills, you are going to have a better relationship. It's awesome. Those things work together. Okay. So I hope that you will be able to incorporate some of these tips throughout this next week, that you'll be able to celebrate love, that you'll be able to feel more love and put it into your week more on purpose. Because remember, the more you restore this type of intimacy and love with yourself, the more you restore it with your spouse. Thank you so much for listening today, and I hope you will join me again next week.